being there because of this requirement, and I can assure you that I'm not lazy at all. So the only way is when the political will is not achieving the objective of having women and vulnerable people being representative politically, when it is not possible only with the political will, you need to have legal requirements because it will help having this representation. And if our society is composed by 50% of women and 50% of men, it is normal that we are trying to have this representation in politics also. And so we have to try everything because it is part of democracy. Having more women in politics is part of democracy. So it is really an objective, not only for African countries, but also all over the world. It's something that we have to fight for, to have a more representation of all the part of our society in politics. It is not to say that we are better than the men, of course not. But men are not better than women, of course not. So it's important to find a way of having it, and the legal requirement can be a way of having and a way of achieving this objective. Not the only one, of course, but it's something that can help on doing it. And the last question was, what is the fact that we are not represented can be a disengagement of women towards politics also. It was not the case this time in Nigeria, because we have seen that a lot of women went to vote. So this is interesting to see that women are not taken into account in the politics that we are doing in a country. So I think that it is not an idea coming from nowhere, but it is an idea coming from the roots of your society. And if we can help in this recommendation, I think it could be interesting for democracy in Nigeria. I will give the floor to Anna also. We share, because we are women, so we share.
Thank you for sharing, Maria. So on the question on results transmission, our sample was very small and certainly couldn't be seen as representative at that stage of the process. Therefore, we looked at INEC and others to give explanation on how results have been transmitted exactly. But for us, this issue really comes back to some of the recommendations that we've made, including priority recommendations, about the need to have much more robust procedures around the results transmission and around the collation of results, for these to be very clear in advance, agreed with the parties in advance, so everybody knows what is happening and knows what they can expect. Also for there to be stronger transparency, so people can see exactly what results are where at each stage of the process. So again, this problem that has arisen and this controversy that has arisen now shows the need to be making reform going forward. On the third question relating to the challenges that INEC faces, obviously administering an election in a country like Nigeria is of course going to bring many challenges with a population of this size and such a big terrain. But in addition to that inherent challenge, there were other challenges that could have been avoided in this election. That includes the way that party supporters were behaving, with violence to polling and electoral staff. That's something that is never good in an election. It damages an election process to have violence and intimidation to staff. Also, of course, the late legal changes made it difficult for INEC to then work out its regulations and have time to practice and to implement them. And that's exactly why, as Maria has said, we very much encourage early national discussion and early starts at reforming the legal framework, so there is time for the debate, so there is time to put the reforms into practice and to test them and refine them before the next general election. Thank you.
Thank you, Hannah. We'll have another round of questions. Yes, there's a gentleman in the second back row, and another gentleman in white in front of him. Any women who'd like to answer? And we've got a woman in the second. So we'll take 3 questions, all on this side of the House at the moment, and we'll then come to this side of the House.
Okay, my name is Sunday Isua. I report for Leadership newspaper. But you talk about intimidation and violence during the election period. Based on your assessment, can you tell us how many people died as a result of this election? Thank you.
Good morning all. My name is Friday. I'm a reporter with Channels TV. I would like to know, you were here in 2011, I'm out there 15, and again 2019. How would you rate the elections? The 2019 election compared with at least the last 2 elections, 2011 and 2015. That is one. I also like you to share with us your view regarding the number of political parties that went in election in 2019. It is the first time we're having such huge number of political parties participating in election. Do you have any reservations regarding numbers of political parties that participated, especially with the performance of some of these political parties? What recommendations will you be making for INEC going forward?
Thank you, and if we could have the microphone, lovely, thank you.
Yeah, I'm Ruth. I work with Bloomberg. My question is on the shortcomings that you highlighted. I wanted to find out if you think these shortcomings tainted the final results. Do you think the results reflected the will of the people?
Thank you very much indeed. We'll take another round shortly if we can have those 3 questions first of all.
Yeah, it's difficult to compare an election to another. So it's difficult to say that one is better than the other because the contexts are really different when you take the situation on 2011, 2015 and 2019. So it's difficult to say that one is better than another. What I can say is that EU observation mission in 2015 made a lot of recommendations. The same number of this one is 30 recommendations. And some of them were addressed by the Nigerian authorities. Perhaps not enough, but some of them were addressed. And what we can say is that there is room of working on more transparency, on more procedural transparency also in the system. And we can say that democracy can't be taken as granted, and we also have to improve the system. And if not, it is just a step forward. So it's a problem if we are not making an improvement for democracy. And the recommendation that we put here on the report is to say, we put this recommendation, we hope that they will be discussed in the country, be discussing with this recommendation and adapting them in the system of Nigerian authority laws and organization. But if you want to go ahead with democracy, it's necessary to have more transparency in the system, and it is what we have in this report. Okay. When it comes to the number of the political parties, we don't have recommendation on this, but we know that it is something that you can have in the national dialogue also, and we can't cover everything in this report. Perhaps other observation mission will draw some complementary recommendation in their report. We have no recommendation on the number of parties, but I think that it is something that Nigerian has to discuss with the different stakeholders in the national dialogue.
On the first question on the number that were killed during this election, it's of course very difficult to measure this, so there will understandably be very different figures around this. Based on the reports that we received from our long-term observers in the field and from cross-referencing different media reports that were coming through, we've recorded that there seemed to be at least 150 people that were killed over the campaign and election days and results processes. This isn't a definitive figure. This is based in part on second-hand information. But obviously that's 150 people too many for any electoral process. On the final question of whether the results reflected the will of the people, This is always a difficult question and made even more difficult here by the fact there were so many elections. It wasn't just one we were observing. But our role was to look at the process and to look at what was going well and what was difficult in the process. And of course, it's up to Nigerian institutions and people to look at the results themselves. Thank you.
I think we've got time for another round of questions. I see your hand right at the back. If we could have the microphone at the back. Any more questions? Down.
I do give Polinos from the Sun newspapers. My question is, I remember in the 2015 election, the final report was presented on the 22nd of October 2017. That's over 2 years. So why the rush to present this one today? That's my question.
Are there any other questions which we could take at the same time? Okay, one final question then.
I think it's for Anna because she was observing the election on 2015, but I think there is a misunderstanding. The report that you are speaking about is the follow-up mission. After 2 years, we have this follow-up mission, and we will have this follow-up mission after 2 years in this election follow-up mission 2019. So it is not the same momentum, and I think that in 2015 it was exactly the same period to have this report, but I let Anna answer.
Exactly. I was lucky enough to also be the deputy in 2015. And despite being a woman, I wasn't so lazy that we waited 2 years to release the report. So the final report was released some months later, and indeed, as Maria has said, some years later, there was a follow-up mission with the chief observer, Santiago Fisas, returning to Nigeria to look at what was happening with electoral reform, with the implementation of recommendations. And I think this shows the strong commitment that the EU has to not just assessing an election, but really looking at ways forward to improve future elections. So we hope that when there are future reviews of what's happening with election reform, very definite actions will have taken place. And as we were saying, this is something that we think needs to start right away with an inclusive national conversation. Thank you very much.
And thank you very much, everybody, for attending the press conference. We have copies of the report outside for you all, as well as a press release. It'll be uploaded on the website, the address down below, in an hour or so's time. But once again, thank you very much indeed for attending, and please join us for refreshments outside.
I like the way they do that thing, so very concise, very concise. I like it.
Okay, Maria. Okay, good to see so many Marias.
Which broadcaster? Oh, VOA, sorry, I didn't hear you. Yes, you want to do an interview? Yes, that's right. Yes, she said that's language. She said mother tongue.
So, you yourself have a good afternoon. Divertidos.
En un piso apartamento de partidos políticos, y sabes que se van a encontrar con cualquier político.